available there. All right, so let me do my intro again, just so we get on the recording. All right, so thank you to Christy Sutherland from Prosperity Ag for joining us today. She's been a grant writer with WFAN as a support for us in, and she's been with us probably longer than anybody else at WFAN in terms of the current staff. And we're really thankful to have her join us today to share about specifically the SARE Farmer Rancher Grant Program. So she's probably going to focus in on the NC SARE, but there are 4 different regions within the sort of SARE I guess, program. But I think a lot of the insights that she'll share here will also be transferable if, say, you're in the Western or the Eastern or the Southern regions. All right. Well, thank you, Christy. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you. She's got an overview to go through, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, so my name is Christy Sutherland. I'm with Prosperity Ag. Today, we are focused on the North Central SARE Farmer Rancher Grant Program. As Jennifer mentioned, there are other regions of SARE that have very similar programs. So today we will be specific to this one, but it is very similar throughout the other regions. I will also caveat that the SARE does have their own webinar that is very helpful. If you haven't already, I would recommend that you listen in on that. I do have some resources at the end of these slides that you can easily hop on and see their webinar on that too. So this is our agenda. We're going to go through the program basics pretty quickly. I did let Jennifer know if you guys have questions throughout, it's a pretty small group today, so please feel free. You can go off of mute and ask me questions throughout. Don't have a problem with that. You can also put your questions into the chat. That's fine as well. We have plenty of time for questions at the end. And then your question may be answered throughout as well. That very well could happen. We did get a couple of questions submitted earlier, so we'll go over those as well. So basically, we'll go over who Prosperity Ag is, a little bit about the program. I've got some grant tips specifically for this program, the key components that go into a North Central SARE Farmer Rancher Grant. I have a really cool project example. I think it's always helpful for people to see like what are folks doing with this grant. Go over those pre-submitted questions and then answer any questions that you guys might have from this. So who is Prosperity Ag? So we've been around since 2007. As the name suggests, with ag in the name, we have been helping agriculture entities throughout the entire United States with grant consulting, grant writing, grant administration, just in whatever services that they need. We have been helping WFAN since 2019, been with a couple predecessors of Jennifer, just kind of helping in whatever capacity it is, done a lot of research, a lot of applications. It's been super fun to see a lot of the different projects that they've done over the years. But we do help lots of different entities, not just nonprofits, also small farms. We've also got a wide variety of entities outside of ag. We've got some nonprofits, whether that is ag-based or not. We do help everybody that kind of comes to us. So we're happy to see how we can help you guys. We've got some contact information at the very end if you guys need assistance. One thing that we have done a lot with these SARE grants is just done some review. So if you guys write them, these ones are pretty simple, but if you just want somebody to take a look at them, just give a review kind of, hey, I want a second set of eyes on these. Happy to do that. We just kind of charge an hourly fee and would be happy to just kind of give you guys a set of eyes on that so that put the best application possible in. Okay, so the Farmer Rancher Grant. This is a really cool program. There is some really neat projects that have come as a result of this. These are just kind of the very basics with this. So eligibility. So basically who can apply for this program? The very first thing is, I don't have this listed, but North Central region are the states of Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Ohio, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. This is listed on their website. They kind of have it color coded to the different regions. They do also have a state coordinator. Each state has their own. It's really cool because that state coordinator knows a lot about every single state and the projects within it. So great resource. They also can provide some application review. So not only do you need to be within those regions, but they also define a farmer rancher as someone who raises crops or livestock, especially as a business. One question that I know has come up before is, do we need a farm number? And that is not needed. You don't have to be issued anything from like the FSA or the USDA or anything like that. The funding level, there's two different funding levels. If you apply as an individual farmer, you can get up to $15,000. If you apply as two or more farmers, you can get $30,000. They consider that a group. You don't have to ask for that full amount. Just depends on the project. The purpose of the project or the program is to help farmers and ranchers explore innovative ideas and share what they're learning with their peers. And then the deadline for this is a fiscal year 25. So this is kind of coming at the very end of the calendar year. So this is due December 4th at 4 p.m. Central. So those of you guys that are in the Eastern time zone, make sure that you're paying attention to that time. One thing also is all of this information is in the guidelines. They call it the call for proposal. All of this information is in that call for proposal or guidelines. Please make sure you're downloading that. All of this is in there, very well detailed. Make sure that that's something that you guys are paying attention to. So a little bit about the SARE model. So SARE stands for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. Ultimately, SARE is a division of the USDA. So it is a federal agency, but they operate a little bit differently in that they're really focused on education. They're focused on sustainability, and it's not just sustainability as in kind of like hugging trees and being green. It's also sustainability as in economically and making sure that the farms are able to run as efficiently as they can. So you can see here, there are three aspects of sustainable agriculture that SARE focuses on. So the projects must be all three. So they need to be ecologically sound, they need to be economically viable, and they have to be focused on farmer, rancher, and community well-being. There's lots of different ways to define those three, but for one reason or another, we have to make sure that the projects kind of focus on all three of those. One way to kind of think about SARE is think about them as an on-farm trial, kind of like a pet project, something that you've always wanted to try, but with the added aspect of it needs to have that peer-to-peer education piece, farmer to farmer, rancher to rancher learning. There also, the outreach could be through materials that are shared online. It could be videos, it could be case studies. There's lots of different examples, and we'll get into that a little bit more in the presentation. There is a huge variety of types of projects that kind of fall within the SARE portfolio. What's listed here is just the tip of the iceberg. So lots of different things: cover crops, diversification, high tunnels, marketing, pastured livestock, pollinators. The list goes on. There's a really great resource on the SARE website. There's a link to it at the end of this presentation, and we're happy to share this as well with everybody that attends, where you can search for every project that's been funded through SARE, anything that you guys have been thinking about possibly doing whether you're applying for a SARE grant or not, you can search their database and see what could I possibly look for? What has SARE been doing? Could I, possibly look to see what's been done about this topic and maybe even just learn about how I could implement that on my farm. Great resource, all free to be able to look on it on their website and just, kind of download those resources. Okay, so project details. The farmer rancher grant kind of wants you to fall into one of these options. It's very difficult if you wanted to do both within one project. It just kind of stretches you a little too much to be within both. So there's two types of projects. There's a research project or an education or demonstration. They kind of consider those to be within the same. Both of these projects have to have some kind of outreach within that. These projects are testing, evaluating, adapting innovative practices. You could be conducting learning circles, you could be doing education events, field days, demonstrations for innovative practices. You could develop new technologies, you could create or modify existing equipment. There's so many different things that you could be doing with these types of projects. Kind of the thing to keep in mind is that SARE wants to see innovation. They want to see something different than what is being done already. And again, it kind of comes back to utilizing the database of what's been done, what has already been done, and how can we change and build upon that. We'll kind of get into it a little bit more later in the presentation about the different components of the application, but they don't want to see the same old thing. They want to see like what are we trying to do? How are we trying to achieve this? Why is this a problem, and how are we going to change it? We just want to see like what is challenging you as a farmer. So now we're going to use some funds from the SARE program to overcome that. And then speaking of funds, how can we use these funds within the program? So we could use it for labor. They definitely will use that to pay you as the farmer to carry out this project. You can't use it for day-to-day farming operations, but you can use it for your labor to carry out the project. You can use it for supplies. You can use it for travel. So if the travel, you need it to travel to the field day, or you need to travel for the education event, all of that would be eligible. Data collection, the supplies associated with the data collection or the software, the field days, all of that would all be eligible. As I mentioned, no day-to-day farming operation, no land, no infrastructure or insurance. Equipment can get very difficult. What they state is if the equipment is necessary to carry out the project, you can include it, but no more than 50% of the project costs can be dedicated to that. They count equipment as anything with a project cost over 5,000 and it has a useful life for over a year. And then it gets even more complicated if it's livestock or seeds or plants. What I would recommend is if you have anything in your project that relates to any of those items, contact SARE. They will help you. They are absolutely such a great staff. They will make sure that your budget is within their guidelines, but contact them early. They will start to get really busy as the deadline gets closer. But other than that, definitely a lot of wiggle room on what they will allow those grant funds to be used for. And as I mentioned, there's a project example later in the presentation where we can kind of go through what somebody has done and what they've used those grant funds for. So here's kind of one of the big ones. So let's go over some grant tips. One of the biggest things I think I've mentioned already, download that call for proposal, that the guidelines. There's so much good information in there. And really, you should be using those grant guidelines, and you should be reading it throughout the entire process. Um, if you've applied for this grant before, don't just assume you know what's in that call for proposal. SARE has pointed out that there's even new information in there from last year. There's some additional guidance about what can and can't be funded listed in that. So even someone like me who's applied for this many, many times, I need to be careful that I'm reading that in great detail, and making sure that everything is in there, as I know, so that it's not something that I'm getting tripped up on. Um, Usually I recommend that you read these before you get started, as you're going through the writing process. Read it before you submit the application. So this is kind of like your Bible as you're going through the grant process. One really nice thing about the SARE program is they have their scoring criteria listed in that guidelines. So this program is reviewed by a peer committee. So they have, right now, they actually have a call out for peer reviewers. So you guys as farmers could even be on these committees, as long as you're not submitting an application, because that's a conflict. But there are other farmers that are on the peer review committee. They are using those scoring guidelines to score all of those applications. So they're kind of giving you the answer sheet on how the people that are reviewing your applications are going to be evaluating it. So this is critical, that as you're filling out the narrative, you're reading those sections and you're making sure that you're answering them and hitting all of those points. You would be surprised how many times people will come and they'll tell me, okay, here's my narrative. And I'm like, you've missed half of the sections of the scoring criteria. And they're like, no, it's fine. They'll just read about my nonprofit, or they'll read about my farm, and they'll just love it so much. They'll love what we're doing. It doesn't matter. They don't care. They'll just think we're really cool, which makes me laugh. And you kind of roll your eyes. But people do say this stuff to us. And at the end of the day, these peer review panels, they have a job to do. They will look for reasons to throw out applications. They will look for reasons to, say this is not eligible. So make sure that you're looking at these guidelines. Make sure that you're paying attention. Hit every single one. It may feel like you're being redundant between sections. That's kind of just how grants work. It's okay to be redundant. It's totally fine. So just make sure that you're paying attention to that. Clear and concise. This is kind of like my grant protocol. Be clear and concise. Don't keep going on and on and on. When you get into the grant portal, and we'll talk about that here in a second, each section of the grant application has like a word limit. So different sections will say like 1,000 words is the limit that you have, for your background. Just because there's 1,000 words doesn't mean you have to use it. If you can get your point across in 500 words, that's fine. Don't just keep going on and rambling, again, because you just want to talk about how cool your farm is. The easier that you can get your point across, the better. We also really suggest avoiding any kind of industry jargon. Even though these are peers that are reviewing your application, don't assume that these people are going to understand words that are just within your industry. If you're going to use abbreviations, always spell them out at least the first time. Just as simple as you can make it, the better. Um, just know a lot of people have very low reading levels, so just that's one of the keystones to this is keep it as clear and concise as you can. Um, at the end of the day, if you can have somebody else review your narratives, that is super important. You want somebody removed from the project to be able to review it, to be able to understand it, somebody that's not involved. So the reviewing for the scoring and the reviewing for being clear and concise can both be done by somebody that's not involved in the project. And it might be kind of boring to have somebody review your narrative, but it's always very helpful, I think, to get that feedback. A few more grant tips. The SARE portal is not the easiest to develop your narrative in. It's not the worst to navigate, but what we recommend is to use Word or Google Docs or something similar to develop everything in. Once you have everything done, you can copy and paste all of your information over into the portal. This is mostly because it just is not the most user friendly for wordsmithing and all of that. So use a Word doc. It's also easier to share that narrative with somebody else if you're using Word. The grant portal, you would have to share your username and password. Probably not the safest thing to do. Especially with cybersecurity and all of that right now. So use a Word doc. You can easily create your username and password for the portal and get the outline into a Word doc. The call for proposal or guidelines also lays out everything that is in the grant. So you can also use that to create your narrative as well. That's not a problem at all. Um, so one other tip is make sure that you're explaining the problem in your application. It's really easy to just all of a sudden jump into this is what I'm going to do without first explaining why you need to do it. So it kind of set the stage, explain to them why you need to do this. This is especially important because in the SARE world, there is a requirement that you reference other SARE projects and how you're going to build upon that. Again, I think I mentioned earlier, there's a database that has every SARE project listed. I'm happy to show that. I can share my screen and show you guys what that looks like. But every SARE project is given a number. So let's say you're researching, like the grazing patterns of livestock, like in this picture. You would have to make sure that your specific project has not been done in the exact same way. So let's say the grazing patterns has only been done in Iowa, and that's the only state it's been done in, but you want to show what the grazing patterns look like in Kansas. So in your narrative, you would explain the problem. And then when you're referencing the other projects, you would reference that SARE project that was done in the other state. And you would say, I'm building upon the SARE project that was done. And here's why I'm building upon that, and we're gonna expand on this because it was done in a different state and it doesn't fully represent the problems we're facing. And you just kind of expand and kind of explain why that's been the problem that you've had. How are you as the farmer going to benefit? But then also, why are other farmers going to benefit from that as well? Because, ultimately, as we mentioned before, this is a farm to farm or a rancher to rancher sharing network. And we need to be able to convey that other people are going to be, benefiting from this project as well. Okay, so we're going to go through kind of the key components to the grants. These are not like the narrative sections. These are just kind of the building blocks that go into applying for the grant. So we already mentioned the SARE portal. If you think you're going to apply for a SARE grant ever, I would recommend going ahead and just creating an account. Nothing wrong with having one. Just you could hop into that portal, familiarize yourself with how it works. You can start an application, just kind of poke around, see how it looks, see what it would look like to build an application for that. Totally okay if you don't actually follow through and submit one. But it's a great thing to be able to just be familiar with that system. SAM.gov. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with SAM.gov. It has navigated that system. You are required to have a UEI, or what's called a unique entity identifier, to submit a SARE farmer rancher grant. SAM.gov is a federal registration that allows you to do business with the government. When you go through the SARE portal on the application, it's one of the last steps. It'll say like, what's your UEI? And you just copy and paste that number in there. The SAM.gov portal is very overwhelming if you've not done it before. It is a free registration. If you Google SAM.gov, sometimes a different website than the actual SAM.gov will pop up, and you'll click on a third-party website, and it will charge you to register. And some of these websites will charge you up to like $500 a year. And it's essentially just like a third party managing your account. Any website that's going to charge you to maintain your registration is spam. You don't want to use them. I do have a SAM.gov walkthrough manual on my website. I'm happy to share that link. I've got a link to our website on the very last page. Happy to send the link at the end of the webinar if Jennifer wants to. It's a tough website to navigate if you don't know what you're doing. It does expire every year. So it is something that you'll need to keep updated as long as you have the SARE grant active. So make sure that you keep up to date with that. Can definitely be something that's very intimidating for folks. Okay, the timeline. So the grants are due early December. Applicants most likely won't be notified of their award until February, but the projects aren't going to start until April. The way that the SARE grants work is the first 50% of funds will be dispersed to you. So you won't get your funds until April or May. So make sure when you're writing your application, you're keeping in mind that you're not getting all of your money up front. You're just going to get that first 50%, and then make sure when you're writing it, you're keeping in mind when your project will start. I wish it was easy that it would start January 1st of 2026, but that's just not how grants work. They never have a nice, clean timeline. So just another thing to keep in mind is make sure, and this is again, all in those guidelines. So make sure when you're writing that grant that the timeline matches up. And then grant reporting. Super important that you keep this in mind. So this is also can be called grant administration. This is required that you submit grant reporting or grant administration throughout your project period. As long as you write your grant with this in mind, you're going to be fine. Write your grant keeping outcomes, what you're trying to achieve, reasonable. Don't bite more than you can chew, so to speak. Make sure that you can measure what you're trying to achieve. Make sure that whatever you're trying to achieve is something that's, within reason. And again, as long as you write the grant with this in mind, it's going to be super easy for you to be able to carry this project out and submit these reports throughout the project without a whole lot of work. You're going to be carrying out the project, doing all of these activities, probably collecting that data as you're going on. And oh yeah, this is something that I had already planned on doing as part of my project. Here's the reports to SARE. All of these reports are going to be submitted through the portal as well. So you're going to get really familiar with that portal as you go through. And again, the SARE staff are fantastic. They're going to reach out to you. They're going to work with you if for some reason those outcomes are not meeting your expectations. The other nice thing about SARE is, let's say your project totally fails. It just tanks. Like you don't achieve at all what you'd hoped for. That's okay. You still have to report that that it just tanked. You still have to do your education or your outreach. Again, you just have to explain what happened and why, so that other farmers or other ranchers know what you did and why. Why did it fail? What happened? So that other people can learn from it. Other people can go on the SARE website and search your type of project, and now they know not to do that same thing so that they won't also fail. So it's really cool. You can see other projects on the website where there were some failures, but that's just kind of how research works. It's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows all the time. So that's been a common question we've had, is like, what, I feel like I have to hide it if we failed, but you don't. But make sure you're staying in contact with the SARE representatives as your project goes on, so that they know that this is happening. So it's not like a complete surprise when those reports come in and the numbers look kind of crazy. Okay, a couple more key components. Letters of support. Any farmer or rancher that is involved in the project is required to upload a letter of support. So if you're just applying as an individual farmer, I know it sounds really weird, but if it's just one and it's you and you're the applicant, you do have to write a letter of support to yourself. It sounds super silly, but you do. If you have 4 farmers as part of a group, you will have to have all 4 farmers write letters of support. Jennifer and I just had a SARE project that we worked on, and we had 3 people that needed to do a letter of support. And man, we waited till the last second for one of them to come in. Those third party project, when you're waiting on somebody, it's going to take a lot longer than you think for those to come in. So ask for those letters of support early. Ask for that like the very first thing. That way they can be working on those while you're doing the rest of the work. So yeah, because you might be scrambling and waiting until the grant's due, waiting on that. So a livestock care plan, if the project does involve livestock, you have to fill out another form. They ask for like veterinary information. There is a link to that form on the website. An important note about the budget, make sure you can justify every item that you list. So not just, hey, I'm going to ask for my labor as the farmer to be $20,000 over the course of a year. But I can justify that, hey, that is $25 an hour with X amount of hours over X amount of weeks. They want that level of detail for every single item. So make sure that you're able to justify that, because in that section of the budget, there's a section for not just the line item, but for the justification for that. And then this isn't a component of the grant, but it's an important thing to keep in mind is timing. Every single thing about grants takes a lot of time. It takes time to write the narrative. It takes time to get into the portal. It takes time to get that sam.gov registration. Make sure you're giving yourself lots and lots and lots of time. Do not wait until the day the grant is due to get into the portal. Do not wait until the grant is due to start your sam.gov registration, because that can take like 3 weeks. So if you don't have one, get one like today. Again, don't wait until the last minute to get those letters of support. It's gonna take a lot longer than you think it is to get things moving. You could be the fastest writer, and that's awesome. But there's so much more to this grant than writing. As you can see, that's kind of what I wanted to do these key components for, is there's so much more than just writing about your project. Make sure you give yourself tons and tons and tons of time. Get all those little bits and pieces together. And again, for like the 5th time, read those guidelines, read that call for proposal. Make yourself a checklist, whatever you need to do so that you've got all of those things together. I think the next is the project example. So this was a really cool project that we just did. This was actually out in Western SARE. Their timelines are way different than ours. So they were just awarded a little bit ago. But it's a really cool project, so I included theirs. So Sunny Cow Farms is a citrus grower. They really wanted to explore wholesaler perceptions of non-gassed or green citrus, and not just the impact to producer revenue, but also to wholesalers and whether or not they would purchase green citrus. So essentially what we're doing is we're collecting data on the farm to figure out how much is it costing them to gas the citrus to turn it orange. And then also sending out sample boxes of citrus picked on the same day. Half of it is orange and half of it is green, sending it to wholesalers so they can do sampling. And then they're surveyed. So then at the end of the project, we're doing a video. We're also going to do a case study where we kind of go through not just the survey results with the perceptions, but also the economics of how can these growers save money if we can get the public to understand that if we can save the money from not gassing citrus. Now, this is a tiny citrus grower. There is a long way for them to go for the public to embrace green citrus. The part that Sarah liked is that there's opportunity for them to kind of partner with industry groups to bridge a gap. They're not expecting Sunny Cow to change the citrus industry. It's just kind of like this pet project that they've always wanted to do. They've wanted to see, is this even an option that we could sell green citrus? So this is very much a let's see what happens. And it's going to take a long time for anything to come of it. But was really a cool project and very much more on the marketing side of ag than a lot of other projects. So really cool project. We're really excited to see. They're actually sending their tasting boxes next on Monday of next week. They just started to harvest this week. So really cool. Really excited to see where that one goes. But that one was just like the most recent. Theirs is just called a farmer, the farmer grant. They don't have a rancher one out there. So we had a couple pre-submitted questions, so we're going to go through those really fast. I think we're doing okay on time, and then we'll see what questions you guys have, if any. So the first question was about when the applicant would be notified and whether or not funds were reimbursement based. So SARE did have this nice little chart. So essentially the applications, as we mentioned, were due late or early December. Applicants will be notified mid-February. The earliest possible start date is going to be April 1st. So there's going to be a big gap between when you're notified and when you can start the project, which is always very uncomfortable. And the reason, I think one of the toughest reasons is ultimately, there's a lot of things that have to go on behind the scenes. This is a government grant, so there's a lot of, government things that are happening. So you're just going to have to wait. The reimbursement based is, no. It's going to be, you're going to get 50% of the funds upfront. So that's going to happen as soon as the grant application, or I'm sorry, the grant agreement is signed. So once the grant agreement is signed, they're going to work on releasing 50% of your project. Once that happens, you spend the 50% however you need to. January of 2027, you'll do a progress report, and then 35% is available. And then at the project end date, 15% will be available. So I know one question somebody had on another webinar was like, can I do this project faster than the 24 months, which I think is something I didn't include. But yes, you can do the project faster if you want to. And then I know, kind of piggybacking off of that project was, is there a cost share for the program, which essentially means, do I have to put any money in? Like, is it a one-for-one match? There is no match for this. You don't have to match anything. It's all USDA or SARE money. With that kind of like uncomfortable like waiting period between when you're notified of the grant and when you can start, don't spend any money because there's no reimbursements. They will not pay for anything that happens before the grant agreement is signed and you're given the 50%. If you spend anything before that, it's just going to be your money. So just wait until that 50% happens. I know it's not fun, but that's just kind of the nature of federal grants. And then the last question was, are the grants considered taxable income? And the answer is yes. I am not a tax professional, so consult with your CPA, but USDA does consider this to be taxable income. Okay. That was a lot of information. So happy to answer any specific questions if folks have anything specific. I do have the resources on the next page, so I'm going to just slide to that really fast. SARE does have an eligibility quiz QR code that you guys are welcome to scan. And then I do have the link for funded projects where you guys can click, you guys can go to that website, you can search by keywords, you can search by state. And then I do have the walkthrough manual on the USDA REAP grant page of my website.
All right, Chrissy, I think you got some questions coming in the
Okay.
chat. So the first one is from you, Lee, and it's can nonprofits apply? And also, do we need an LLC or be registered as a business to apply?
That's a great question. USDA considers, as long as you're raising livestock or growing crops, that's how they're determining if you're a farmer or a rancher. So if you're a nonprofit, but you are raising livestock or growing crops, that's how they're determining that. So I guess that would be the question.
Yeah.
I would also, if there's like an interesting structure to your organization, I'll say it again, SARE staff are fantastic. I would not hesitate to reach out to them. Liz Brownlee is the contact for North Central. She's always been very punctual about getting back. So I'm sure if there's something like tricky about your organization's, structure, they would probably be happy to walk through that with you guys to just to double check. I always say never assume that you're eligible or not. But yeah, the quiz that they have there too might be helpful as well.
Yeah, and I'll add too that we focused specifically on the grants for farmers and ranchers, but SARE also has a number of other grants
Yes.
for nonprofits and researchers to also apply to.
Yeah, they have a lot of different programs. So this one was specific to this, but definitely check their website. They've got a lot of really cool programs.
Yeah, and similarly, Agnes's question was, yeah, do you have to be a registered farmer to apply? And bigger questions about eligibility. Yeah.
Okay, no, you don't have to have like a farm number. You don't have to be registered anywhere. They don't require anything like that. So the only registration you do have to have is that sam.gov that I mentioned. But that is not tied to anything. You could be a nonprofit, you could be an LLC, you could be a sole proprietor. There's nothing, you would be an individual and have a sam.gov. There's nothing with that registration that's tied to anything else.
Yeah. Carolyn's got a question. So SARE grants are highly competitive. What percent of
Yes.
applications are funded?
Yeah, that's a great question. Last year, or the last round that they had this, they said they had about 150 applications and 40 were funded. It's hard to know with this round. Technically, this is fiscal year 2025's money, so it's super delayed. I think a lot of people are waiting for this round to come out. There is going to be fiscal year 2026 funding, hopefully very, very soon. So there's a little bit of talks in at least in the grant world that maybe the competition will be split between those two because some people will want it right now, some people will be waiting for the next round that will hopefully be out very soon. Either way, it is a competitive program, which is why it's important to take all of those tips into consideration and make sure that you have the best application. One thing to keep in mind is because this is a federal grant, when you get your application, if it is rejected, federal grants are required to provide feedback on why it was rejected. So you will get feedback on why your application was rejected. So use that feedback to apply again. Don't get too discouraged knowing that it is super competitive.
Rebecca's got a question. She wasn't able to find the livestock care form on the SARE website.
Okay,
Do you
we
have a
might,
place to
yeah.
recommend?
It very well could also be in the portal, but we can find it and we can link that somewhere, or Jennifer can send it out. But
Cool. All right. Any other questions? Has anybody on the call applied for a SARE grant before and want to share maybe some of their experience?
Hi, this is Hillary Goodgame. I've applied for a SARE grant before, and I did not get that. Like, I was absolutely cool, and I feel critical to apply again, perhaps same grant and in the same category. So for me, it was a very seamless process. I think the information about making sure that you have your sam.gov and you don't wait till the last moment is very critical. But I've learned so much more just participating in this seminar. I would just ask one question. Isn't it possible to apply for more than one grant in different categories, or can you even apply for in the same category more than one proposal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can apply for more than one grant in different categories, but you cannot apply for more than one within the same category. So you can't do more than one farmer rancher, but you could do a farmer rancher and a partnership grant. That's absolutely eligible. And a lot of people will get funded more than one application across categories. And in fact, we definitely see that happen. So absolutely apply for more than one, just make sure that it's across different categories.
Hi, this is Rebecca. I have a question. I noticed there's the research and education category, and then there's the farmer rancher category.
Yes.
Is one of those more competitive than the other if you have a proposal that could fit into either one?
Yeah, so the research and education is going to be a letter of intent at this point. So what you'll be submitting is very abbreviated information. That one is very competitive. The volume of grant dollars that you can get for that one is very high. We see a lot of universities apply for that one. However, I would absolutely, if you've got a great project, I would encourage you to look at it. What I usually tell people is look at the goals of the program and see how they align with you. And then I would also look to see who was funded last year or last round, and see if there's projects that seem even somewhat similar to what you're doing, and evaluate, like, is my project even along that same level? Because there's some really cool farms that could get funded within that. But we do typically see either universities or groups that are applying for the research and education side.
Okay.
Yeah, WFAN, we just submitted a grant under the professional development grants, and that was partnering with several people at universities and that do consulting, related to the type of work that we do. And we're also going to be working on a partnership grant to help support our Harvesting Our Potential mentoring program. So yeah, we are applying for two different ones, and I think it's making sure that the work that we're doing is distinct enough that it's really not the same project.
Yeah.
And we had another one where we were added as sort of like a partner. So we weren't like the submitting individual, but we're looped into the grant as somebody that would participate in the project.
Thanks. And it's the letter of intent stage right now?
Yes, yes. And then if they like the project, if they want you to move to the next level, then they'll invite you for a full proposal.
And I'll add with SAM.gov, it is something you do have to renew annually.
Yeah.
And one thing to watch out for, I don't know if this is as true for the grants portal, but I know for the business portal for contractors with SAM.gov is you'll get on some kind of list
Yeah.
where you're going to get spam in the mail
Yep.
saying that you need to pay somebody to help you renew, and it is free, not pay anybody
Yeah.
to help
It's
you do
not
your
just
SAM.gov.
mail. Yeah. It'll be text messages.
Yeah.
It'll be phone calls. It's very spammy. So don't fall for any of it.
Yeah. You might get postcards and mail it, just throw them out.
Yeah.
Recycle. Well, we got a couple more minutes. Any final question for Christy?
May I ask, please, so within the same category, if you're not the primary person who's applying for it, such as the research grant, can you be part of the research grant, not as the primary person, but as someone who may be a collaborator, and then still submit another grant independently, or no, you're precluded because that would technically be considered two applications within the same category?
So if you're going to be a subrecipient of,
Yes.
yeah. So typically what we see is if you're going to be a subrecipient of the project, you're you're okay. You couldn't be the applicant of
Yes.
two, like you couldn't submit
Yes.
two, but if you're a
I-
subrecipient, then
I
you should be
understand.
okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. And
Thank you
just
so
make sure
much.
it's not like a part of the same project too, though. So it needs to
Yes,
be a
make sure they're
distinct
two completely
project.
different projects.
Yes, I understand. Thank you so very much. That's very
Yeah.
helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I think we're at time. So Christy identified a couple things that she's going to share with me that we can include in our follow-up email on this. Just a heads up, we are planning for a fundraiser this Saturday. So my goal is to upload this video today and be able to send that email out. But it might be later tomorrow, depending on my capacity. But we'll be happy to share that with you and include links to those other resources in that follow-up email. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
you.